The universe dangles forbidden fruit before us, then laughs as we reach. Have you ever stared into the eyes of someone you knew you could never truly possess and felt your soul tear in two? It's a unique form of exquisite torture to recognize a bond so searingly real, so utterly undeniable, while knowing with cold certainty that it's destined for the pyre. Life, circumstance, the treacherous currents of time, they all conspire to pull you apart, leaving you shipwrecked on separate shores. And in those desolate moments, the brutal truth dawns. The universe isn't always about granting wishes. Sometimes it's about detonating dormant parts of ourselves that would have remained forever in shadows. Carl Jung understood that these seismic connections don't spring from logical calculations. They erupt from the murky depths of the unconscious, whispers of the self beckoning us toward a necessary and inevitable metamorphosis. When two souls collide and set the world ablaze, it's rarely a prelude to a predictable, picturesque life together. No, it's a catalyst, triggering a rapid-fire evolution that might have otherwise stretched across decades, or perhaps never ignited at all. You meet them, and suddenly, the ghosts of your past rise screaming from their graves. Long-buried insecurities claw their way to the surface. Wounds you swore were healed begin to throb with fresh agony, and abandoned dreams unleash a chorus of haunting melodies. It's no accident, this cruel choreography. And while a desperate part of you strains to grasp at permanence, to force this impossible union into a safe, predictable mold, a deeper, wiser voice whispers that possession was never the point. It was always achingly about awakening. The human heart yearns for certainty, for a place to belong, for the illusion of permanence. But the soul hungers for growth, for unfiltered truth, for shattering awakenings. And these desires become warring factions within us, tearing us asunder. You can love someone with a ferocity that burns brighter than any star, and still be destined to walk separate paths. Love is not always a destination. Sometimes it's a fleeting doorway, a portal you pass through, only to find the path behind you collapses into dust. Jung spoke of synchronicity, the uncanny alignment of events, meetings, and connections, guided not by chance, but by the gravitational pull of deeper, unseen realities. That overwhelming sense of recognition when you meet the one isn't mere chemistry. It's a convergence of timelines, a cosmic collision orchestrated by the very forces that shape human destiny. The ensuing pain isn't a malfunction, it's a surgical incision into the hardened shell you've painstakingly constructed around yourself. You may cry out, if the universe sought to instruct me, why inflict such agony? Why bestow something so breathtakingly beautiful, only to snatch it away? But real, transformative growth rarely blooms in the sterile confines of comfort. It's the shattering, the yearning, the relentless unanswered questions that propel you into unexplored abysses within yourself. It's in the wreckage that you excavate your true self, or at least the fragments you've been too terrified to confront. The universe doesn't adhere to our puny notions of fairness. It prioritizes expansion over comfort, embracing the relentless ebb and flow of awakening. And sometimes, the toll exacted for this awakening is the sacrifice of our most cherished desires. That unforgettable person wasn't a cosmic punishment. They were a mirror reflecting your hidden depths, a catalyst accelerating your evolution, a messenger bearing fragments of your soul's forgotten narrative. You needed to meet them. You needed to love them. You needed to lose them, because through that crucible, you would rediscover something essential about your very being, something no amount of comfort, no amount of easy love could ever have revealed. When you find yourself unable to forget someone, it's because they've touched the raw, unfinished parts of you, stirred what was dormant, and nudged you toward the life you were destined to awaken into. Not because they were meant to walk alongside you, but because they were meant to fling open the door you were too paralyzed to approach alone. It scorches, it confounds, it feels monumentally unfair. But when you venture beyond the immediate pain, when you cease demanding, "Why did they leave?" and begin to inquire, "What did they ignite within me?" That's when the glimmer of true understanding begins to dawn. Perhaps they resurrected your capacity to feel after years of emotional shutdown. Perhaps they illuminated the self-destructive patterns you were blind to, the self-sabotage, the insidious fear, the agonizing self-betrayal. Perhaps they shattered the fortress around your heart, reminding you that vulnerability isn't weakness, but the very lifeblood of existence. Jung observed that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. You encountered them and you changed. They altered your very chemistry, not merely your fleeting emotions. And that transformation, that inner alchemy, was the true hidden purpose. Not the fleeting fantasy, not the saccharine fairy tale, but the soul's arduous journey toward wholeness. You aren't broken because you can't obliterate them from your memory. You aren't weak because the ache persists. You are gloriously, painfully human, and your soul recognizes that certain connections are meant to be etched into your being, irrevocably reshaping you into the person you are destined to become. Perhaps you weren't meant to be with them. Perhaps you were meant to discover yourself through them. It's tempting to believe that a real connection should effortlessly unfold, that love should conquer all, that mutual affection should naturally culminate in a shared existence. But the truth is far more brutal, more nuanced than we dare admit. Not every profound connection is destined for permanence. Some are meant to burn with supernova intensity, leaving behind only shimmering ashes, not steadfast roots. The universe orchestrates certain collisions, not for sustained companionship, but to ignite something both sacred and excruciatingly painful within you. They awaken your most profound longings, your most crippling fears, your most deeply buried wounds. They enter your life like a lit match to tinder dry wood, and nothing looks the same in the aftermath. You feel the searing burn and mistakenly believe you've suffered a loss, when in reality, you've been liberated from shackles you didn't even realize were binding you. Carl Jung often emphasized the critical importance of confronting the unconscious, the disowned aspects of ourselves we desperately try to ignore, deny, or suppress. Love, particularly the bittersweet kind that feels faded yet indelible, forces us to grapple with these hidden facets. It drags the unconscious into the harsh glare of consciousness with relentless precision. You are confronted with your raw neediness, your paralyzing fear of abandonment, your destructive idealizations, your festering wounds. And once you see them, you can never unsee them. When two souls meet, yet cannot remain intertwined, it's often because their encounter was intended for activation, not attachment. One soul was tasked with catalyzing the other's evolution. One was meant to mirror back the obscured truths. And once that mirror has served its purpose, the physical connection often dissolves, not out of malice, but out of sheer necessity. You might mistakenly believe you failed because you couldn't make it work. But perhaps succeeding would have lulled you back into a state of blissful ignorance. Perhaps clinging to them would have confined you to outdated patterns, preventing you from transcending the person you were before their arrival. We often crave relationships as safe harbors, as comforting refuges. But many of the most transformative connections are violent storms, beautiful, terrifying, and utterly relentless. They tear down the facade of falsehood, leaving you raw, exposed, and trembling. And in that terrifying vulnerability, you uncover your true, unshakable strength. You unearth the parts of yourself you've been diligently burying beneath layers of survival tactics and hollow compromises. Jung wrote that loneliness does not arise from being alone, but from the inability to communicate the things that truly matter to you. Encountering someone who truly sees you can be the most exhilarating and terrifying experience imaginable. You suddenly recognize how much you've concealed, how drastically you've dulled your own brilliance simply to conform to a world that prioritizes safety over authenticity. Sometimes the universe sends someone to disrupt your carefully constructed silence, to compel you to confront the very truths you've been suppressing, to shatter the fragile peace you've been desperately clinging to. And while a part of you frantically tries to hold on, to persuade them to stay, a wiser, more resilient part recognizes that they arrived to tear down your confining walls, not to take up residence within them. You don't forfeit a soul connection by losing the person. You forfeit it by refusing to acknowledge what it was intended to teach you. If you cling to bitterness, to resentment, to regret, you remain imprisoned within the wound. But if you surrender to the pain, if you allow it to illuminate the places where you were asleep, where you were hiding, where you were consumed by fear, then you unlock the potential for radical transformation. The universe doesn't send people into your life at random. It sends meticulously crafted lessons, shattering awakenings, and brutally honest mirrors. Every connection carries a message. Some messages are delivered through the gentle language of love and stability. Others arrive cloaked in heartbreak and profound loss. But the sender remains constant, the universe relentlessly urging you to become the fullest, most authentic expression of yourself. You might encounter someone who feels like coming home, only to discover they are destined, only to show you that home is something you must first cultivate within your own soul. You might love someone with unparalleled depth, only to realize that true love sometimes demands letting go. Not because the love was counterfeit, but because clinging to it would betray your very becoming. Pain is not always punishment. Sometimes pain is the crack where the light floods in. The person you cannot be with, the one you can never quite forget, might have been the key that unlocked a long-forgotten chamber within your heart. A chamber you didn't even realize was locked. It's not fair. It's not easy. It's not what you envisioned. But it is profoundly meaningful. And meaning, in the Jungian sense, is the ultimate craving of the soul. When you feel the familiar ache of missing them, remember that you're not simply missing them. You're missing the version of yourself that blossomed in their presence. You're mourning the lost innocence, the shattered possibilities, the shattered dreams. But what you gained, the newfound awareness, the deeper self-knowledge, the awakened heart, can never be stolen from you. You may never entirely erase them from your memory. Some souls leave imprints too profound to ever fade. But you can transmute the essence of what their presence ignited within you. You can carry the lessons, the love, the pain, not as oppressive chains, but as magnificent wings. They were never sent to complete you. They were sent to shatter you open, to propel you closer to your authentic self, to remind you that the deepest connections aren't about stifling possession. They are about relentless evolution. The universe doesn't deliver who you want. It delivers who you need. And sometimes the soul you needed most is the one you couldn't hold on to. We often mistakenly assume that if something inflicts deep pain, it must have been fundamentally wrong. That if a connection doesn't endure, it must have been a catastrophic mistake. But the soul operates by a different logic. Jung understood that life isn't about perpetually chasing comfort. It's about individuation. About relentlessly striving to become the truest, most authentic version of yourself. And the path to that self is rarely smooth. It's raw. It's disruptive. It's filled with encounters that tear you asunder so that you can rebuild yourself upon a foundation of unflinching honesty. The person you cannot forget wasn't a wrong turn on your life's journey. They were a sacred interruption. They didn't derail your destiny. They propelled you toward the life you were meant to embrace, even if it meant dismantling the comforting fantasy you once clung to so tightly. You didn't love the wrong person. You loved at the wrong stage of your own growth. Or perhaps you loved someone who wasn't yet capable of loving themselves and therefore couldn't meet you where you needed to be met. And that isn't failure, it's initiation. The universe sometimes sends you the wrong person at precisely the right time, not to keep, but to awaken. To peel back the layers of complacency, to burn away the suffocating illusions you didn't even realize were holding you captive. It feels brutally unfair because it assaults your deepest hopes. The hope that love will magically heal all wounds, that connection will erase the gnawing loneliness, that another human being can anchor you to a safe haven you can finally call your own. But no one can be your anchor. No one can fill the voids you persistently refuse to fill yourself. And the ones who ultimately depart are often the very ones who reveal just how much you still need to journey home, to your own precious soul. When you meet someone who awakens you, you feel vibrantly alive in ways you never imagined possible. But when they vanish, Or when the connection proves impossible, you're left standing amidst the wreckage with the terrifying realization that the aliveness was never truly about them. It was about you. It was always about you. They didn't bestow upon you something you lacked. They merely exposed something you already possessed. And now the true work begins, to nurture that flickering spark, to fan those fragile flames without relying on someone else to keep them eternally ablaze. It's tempting to romanticize these fleeting connections, to naively believe that someday, somehow, the stars will realign, that they'll miraculously return, that it was all merely a tragic matter of timing. And perhaps that's even true. But clinging to the futile hope of reunion often blinds you to the essential task at hand. Integration, assimilating what was awakened within you and weaving it into the evolving tapestry of your being. Jung taught that what you resist persists. If you resist the pain of loss, if you resist the inevitable grief, if you resist the necessary transformation, you remain trapped. You remain suspended, waiting, bleeding out in a story that has already delivered everything it was ever meant to deliver. The universe doesn't squander energy. It doesn't send souls into your life arbitrarily. Every single encounter, even the exquisitely painful unfinished ones, serves a vital purpose. And the moment you cease demanding, "Why couldn't we be together?" and begin earnestly asking, "What was this connection intended to show me?" that's the moment you step onto the path of your next inevitable evolution. Perhaps they ignited within you a capacity to love more fiercely, more unconditionally than ever before. Perhaps they triggered a long-repressed rage you desperately needed to confront. Perhaps they mirrored your deepest, darkest fears. Perhaps they called forth your truest, most authentic self from the depths where you'd shamefully buried it. Or perhaps, just perhaps, they revealed to you just how much more you were capable of becoming. Not every connection is meant for forever. Some are meant for ignition. Some are meant for resurrection. Some are meant for awakening. You are permitted to mourn the loss. You are permitted to grieve the future that will never come to pass. But don't lose sight of what you have gained, a deeper understanding of yourself, a more honest relationship with your own precious soul. There's a distinct kind of grief that washes over you when you realize the universe sent you love, not to possess, but to transform you. It's quieter than earth-shattering heartbreak, deeper than mere fleeting sadness. It's the mourning of an outdated self, of a bygone way of perceiving the world. And yet, beneath that layer of profound grief, there lies a wellspring of undeniable gratitude. Gratitude for having felt something achingly real. Gratitude for having loved with audacious courage. Gratitude for having been cracked open wide enough to finally let the brilliant new light flood in. It's easy to succumb to bitterness, easy to place the blame squarely upon them, upon the capricious universe, upon yourself. But bitterness is merely pain that refuses to evolve. And your soul didn't journey to this earth to remain forever bitter. It came to gloriously grow. You are irrevocably changed, not an accident, but rather the entire brutal point. So perhaps you cannot be with them. Perhaps you were never truly meant to be. But you can honor what they gave you, the unquenchable fire, the unwavering courage, the crystalline clarity. They were a bridge, not a destination, a tempestuous storm, not a safe shelter, a profound lesson, not a life sentence. And if you carry that understanding forward, if you allow the love, the pain, and the awakening to shape you without hardening you, then nothing was ever truly wasted. Then you didn't tragically lose them. You triumphantly found yourself. And that, above all else, was the underlying reason they were sent your way. Some connections are never meant to be effortless. They weren't sent to seamlessly integrate into your pre-existing life or to offer you mindless comfort without the necessary growing pains. They were sent to disarm you, to expose the vulnerable places within you that were still slumbering, still consumed by fear, still clinging to the illusion of safety in hiding. When you encounter someone you cannot ultimately be with, it mercilessly tests everything you thought you knew about love, about destiny, about what you desperately think you need. It forces you to question whether love is merely a form of possession, whether connection is synonymous with permanence, or whether perhaps love is something far more sacred, something that transcends the act of simple holding on. Carl Jung believed that we are drawn to the individuals who carry fragmented pieces of ourselves we are ultimately destined to reclaim. Sometimes those pieces arrive wrapped in the joyful packaging of tenderness, laughter, and shared life paths. Other times they are wrapped in the thorny cloak of chaos, in the agony of longing, in the painful sting of separation. Both are equally real, both are equally sacred. The one you couldn't keep wasn't a reflection of your failure. They were a catalyst for your awakening. They came to remind you that your heart is capable of far more than mere survival. They came to vehemently remind you that pain does not inherently signify that something has gone irrevocably wrong. It signifies that something deeply mattered. There will be moments when the pain resurfaces, raw and unwelcome, when memories flash unbidden in ways you cannot possibly control. When a particular song, a familiar place, a nostalgic scent will momentarily conjure them back into your present reality. Searingly alive. Let it. Don't fight it. Pain doesn't signify that you are irrevocably broken. It signifies that you have truly lived. And when the aching longing inevitably arrives, instead of fixating on why them, consciously shift your perspective and ask, what did they awaken within me that desperately needed to live? The universe isn't cruel, it's infinitely precise. It provides us with the exact encounters we need, not necessarily the ones we so desperately think we desire. It strips away our comforting illusions, clearing the space for something far truer to be born. And often, the deeper the initial connection feels, the more profound the transformation it inevitably demands. If you are presently mourning someone you cannot ultimately be with, honor that grief with unwavering reverence. Honor the profound love, even if it didn't unfold in the way you had so fervently envisioned. Honor the undeniable growth, the expansive evolution, the fragmented pieces of yourself that were painstakingly uncovered through the sheer act of knowing them. And then, slowly, without undue haste, begin to deliberately construct a life that honors precisely what they awakened within you. Not a life rigidly built around the lingering sense of loss, but a life defiantly built around the boundless aliveness they unleashed within your very soul. Because the true tragedy wouldn't be the ultimate loss of them. It would be the tragic loss of the magnificent person you were relentlessly becoming precisely because of them. You carry the invaluable lesson. You carry the unquenchable fire. You carry the enduring love. They were a crucial chapter, not the whole damn book. And sometimes the most exquisitely beautiful chapters are the very ones we can never ever revisit. Only remember with quiet, unwavering gratitude. Thank you for being here, for courageously choosing to traverse the uncomfortable, uncharted territories within your own soul, for bravely facing the profound questions that offer no facile answers. Some connections are meant to change you, not to stay. They came to unlock your soul and vanish.